it's not only the leads and the sales that come from the podcast guesting appearances. That is foundational and important, and we provide an ROI guarantee because we know that is definitely going to work. But the part that becomes exponential in the growth here are the relationships that come as a result of doing that repeatedly.
You're listening to the 7-Figure Leap podcast. We're here to leverage rich relationships and smart strategies to take your business to the next level. Here's your host, Dustin Rieckman.
I've worked with 3 power partners over the past 2 years that have generated over $780,000 for our company here at 7-Figure Leap. And today I want to break down who those partners are, and more importantly, how you can find the right power partners for you. So these 3 power partners that I'm going to go through fall into 3 specific categories. And I think this will be a really useful exercise for you to go through for your own business. So let's start off talking about what is a power partner and what makes a power partner effective. When I use the word partner, I'm not talking about a business partnership. I'm talking about a marketing partnership. So who has a platform that you can access and you can go serve and create a win-win-win relationship, right? So it's a win for the host of this audience because they are always looking for amazing partners and people with niche expertise to come in and serve their people. It is a win for the audience themselves because, of course, they're the direct recipient of your knowledge, your stories, your teaching. And ultimately, it's also a win for you when you do this well because you get new clients, you get new exposure, and you get to grow your authority and build really high quality relationships. So I'm going to get into the 3 types of partners that I want to focus on in this mini episode here. To lay the groundwork, what are some criteria that you should keep in mind when you're thinking about who could be a good partner for you? 3 criteria here. They have the same or an overlapping audience. That's really important. So you want to work with people who have already attracted an audience that trusts them. And within that audience, there are people that would also love to know more about what you do, right? Maybe that sounds obvious, but I think a lot of times we miss this really important step of the audience is relevant, right? And the audience is interested in what you do. And point number 2, the offer that you have or the service or product that you have for that audience is different than that of the host, right? So we're not looking to create direct competition with the host. That doesn't make a good partnership. We're looking for complementary services or complementary expertise that you can give to this audience. So number 1, they have the same or an overlapping audience. Number 2, they have a different offer than you do. And number 3, they're actually open to collaboration, right? Of course, there are people out there who have an amazing audience and you would love to get in front of them, but the host is not open to collaboration. And we're not trying to convince people that collaboration is a good thing. We're trying to step into relationships that they already understand the value of collaboration and they really want this win-win-win relationship for themselves. So that sort of gives you the groundwork for what you should be looking for when you think about power partners. And what I want to go into now are 3 specific types of partners. And I'm going to give you real life examples, real life case studies from my own business to really drive this home. And so I'm going to go through these sequentially. Number 1 is a niche following. Number 2 is they have a complimentary paid program. And number 3 is they have a common community, right? And obviously they could be more than one of these things for a specific partner, but we're going to focus on those 3 things as individual criteria, individual strategy that you could be the lens that you could look at to find the partner. So niche following, complementary paid program, and or common community. So my example for the niche following is one that we've talked about here on the podcast a couple of times, Nathan Barry and Nathan Barry's podcast in particular. We've done a couple episodes. I did one sort of behind the scenes of my experience in being on Nathan's show. And I was really delighted that we were able to have Nathan come onto the 7-Figure Leap podcast here. And we did a case study breakdown of, from his perspective, why my episode performed so well. So last year I was on Nathan's show. I got to go on there. And the niche following here is Nathan caters to professional creators, right? So the people listening to Nathan's show are full-time or near full-time aspiring professional creators, right? So they are creating content, hosting communities, doing coaching, and they value that industry and that niche in a deep way, right? And so they could be writers, authors, YouTubers, social media, blogging. Just think of anyone who creates content as a core part of their business. And a subset of that is a professional creator, someone who really does that at a deep level. And that's exactly who Nathan's podcast caters. So it's a niche following. So when I got on Nathan's show, I won't go through all the details because we've covered it before, but with less than 2,000 views on the video that that was created as a result of my in-person podcast appearance, we generated $140,000 in revenue right away, and then that has continued to grow. So to date, we are over $180,000 in revenue from this one appearance. And that's direct revenue. So people heard the podcast, they resonated because of this niche following, and they reached out to me and our company, had a conversation and said, I really want to work with you because I believe podcast guesting is a very effective strategy for me. Right. And so that's example number one here. So think about in your own business who already caters to your ideal client and they already have accumulated them. Right. So in Nathan's case, he runs a software company called Kit, which is an email service. And they serve creators. And in Nathan's podcast in particular, serves professional creators as the target listener. And so it's a very niche following. As I talk about in the other episodes, that has continued to compound exponentially because I've gotten a lot of other opportunities as a result of that first opportunity. You know, you've maybe heard me talk about, and I've interviewed on this podcast, Pat Flynn, Justin Welsh, and many other creators, Jay Papasan. And those relationships came because I was on Nathan's show first. But the 180,000 in revenue has nothing to do actually with those kind of secondary effects. It's purely from people hearing me on the podcast and saying, I need to talk to Dustin and his company about helping me. So that's the niche following is category number one. Category number two, complementary paid programs. So what you're looking for here are people in your industry or sort of in shoulder or adjacent industries who already provide a paid program or service or even product that's complementary to yours. Okay. So, in other words, they already attract your ideal client, not just with a attention, like in a podcast setting, like Nathan's example, but in this case, people spend money with this other entity who could also benefit from spending money with you because you are complementary to the core thing that they do. So my example here is John Meese. John Meese was actually one of the early guests here on the Seven Figure Leap podcast. And so John has a whole company called Sold Out Coach, and his specialty is helping people create group coaching programs, right? And I've been through his program. It's amazing. And so John's focus area is, hey, you're a professional, you've got a lot of life experience, and you probably already do some coaching and consulting. Why don't you create a group experience around that? And he helps people come up with the promise, the pricing, the curriculum of their program. But what John doesn't do is lead generation for those people, right? And so I developed a relationship with John several years ago, and our things are very complementary, right? We serve the same ideal client in a different way because I'm not trying to teach people group coaching. I do group coaching and I get a lot of people with that interest. And so I'm able to send some people to John who need more help with that. But in this scenario, what I'm focused on is John sends people to me when they've got a group coaching program that he's helped them develop, but they need to scale it and they need to grow their impact through lead generation. And podcast guesting, the thing that we focus on in our accelerator program, is probably the best way to do that. And so over the past several years, I've done a lot of things to serve John's audience because he has a complimentary paid program. So I've been a guest in his virtual summit. We've done spotlight sessions where I come in and talk about my own story in the context of how group coaching has changed the trajectory of my life and business. And what's been most powerful is I came in and did training in John's community for his clients on podcast guesting. I did a really useful training. And because it was so useful and so well received, John ended up taking that training and embedding it as part of his core program. So now everyone that goes through the Sold Out Coach Club program and curriculum and accelerator with John gets exposed to me as a resource for podcast guesting, right? And we give them a really rich resource within the community, but there's always going to be, and this is something I want you to make sure you recognize in this example, there's always going to be people that want to go deeper on a topic that really resonates with them. And so now my training is part of John's community and part of his core program. And as a result of that, he's become my top referral source in this bucket of complimentary paid programs. And John's generated a lot of new clients for us. So that's bucket two, complimentary paid programs. I'll go through the kind of revenue and math here as I summarize the three of these. But that's bucket two, complimentary paid programs. So one, niche following, Nathan Barry example. Two, complimentary paid programs, the John Meese example. And three, actually the biggest of these three buckets for me is a common community. So who already hosts a community that contains a significant number of your ideal clients? So my example for this is StoryBrand. So you may know, if you've been a long-time listener, I'm certified as a StoryBrand guide. So in 2023, through a relationship that came from a podcast, I got exposed to StoryBrand in a deeper way. And I went to Nashville and spent significant investment, and I got certified as a StoryBrand guide. And that certification and those skills have been wonderful. The thing that's actually driven the biggest result for me, though, is actually being part of the community of certified professionals. So this may very well apply to you directly. So if you are in your industry, you have some certification, or you pay to be part of someone's online community or a mastermind, that can be a really rich source of power partners, right? And so in my case, I've got into StoryBrand and I started to meet the people that I onboarded with. And then I went to a summit, and then I got invited to do a virtual training for the StoryBrand community. And then I got featured as like a case study within the community. And I actually got to speak on stage at one of the summits. And so that's over the course of a couple of years. I've generated a lot of amazing relationships, which have created a lot of revenue for our business. So I've had a lot of StoryBrand certified people meet me because I'm part of the community and I've been helpful there. And then they come over and they're like, hey, this podcast guesting thing really makes sense. And we have an aligned value system because they provide services that are complementary to mine. They believe in the power of story, right? It's StoryBrand. There's been a major ripple effect of that where now I get clients from my clients because they have their own rosters of clients and communities and things that they're involved with. And it's created just a ton of goodwill and relationships and lead flow. Currently, and I'm very proud of this, currently in our alumni community, so people come through our Podcast Profits Accelerator program, then they're part of our alumni community. Within that community are 38 StoryBrand certified people. So I'm pretty confident to say it's the second biggest concentration of StoryBrand certified people on the planet outside of their own community, right? But that community and I have a very good symbiotic relationship because I just provide a lot of value. I'm not trying to compete with StoryBrand in any way. I am one of them, but I also provide a niche expertise and service that goes deeper in an area that StoryBrand doesn't focus on, podcast guesting. So this common community has been a very rich source and has become a power partnership. So to recap, niche following, Nathan Barry in my case, and podcast guesting is, of course, one of the primary ways to access the niche following. Two, complementary paid programs such as John Meese. And three, common community, in my case, StoryBrand. In each of these three categories, I have dozens of examples for my own business, and I've seen this play out in so many other people's businesses. So if you can be intentional and strategic, these are available to you. And to give you the numbers, because I know you as a listener, you really want to know like what's the real scoop here. So I already mentioned the Nathan Barry Show in direct revenue to date in less than a year has generated $180,000 in direct revenue for our business, being on that one podcast. Two, complimentary paid programs with John Meese. I This is a little squishy of a number because there's a lot of synergy between our programs at this point, and I'm sure people have come over and joined us, and I don't even know that the origin of that was necessarily John's program. But in the numbers that I can calculate and point to and say they definitely came because of my partnership, my power partnership with John's complimentary paid program, $200,000 plus in that relationship in the past couple of years. And then the third one was StoryBrand. Again, it goes beyond this, but in tangible, measurable client revenue that directly came from my participation in the StoryBrand community. In other words, other StoryBrand certified people, $380,000 in revenue. And I've been certified there since the middle of 2023 and really got plugged in within a year after that. So, roughly within the last 2 years, 180 plus 200 plus 380 is $780,000 from three individual partnerships, right? And so I'm doing this at a high level. This is a big focus of how I do marketing, how I love to serve, and how I view the world. But this is available to you. And so, my encouragement as we wrap up here is think about where you can find power partnerships, right? And there are other buckets, but I wanted to limit it to three today with three really specific examples to hopefully drive this home and make it feel real. Niche following, complementary paid programs, common communities. And where can you go in and enrich the experience for the people in those places, and as a result attract them to you? So if you're into this and you're like, wow, this like marketing partnerships really feels aligned with my value system, and I would really love the opportunity to find more of these partners, that's what we do. Right? So in the Podcast Profits Accelerator, in 90 days we are creating a podcast guesting system for you, which directly addresses bucket one, right? Because that's exactly what we're doing, is getting you in front of the niche followings that are going to be most resonant to you and your business. And we help you define that, and we help you identify those and get on those podcasts. But everything I've described here and way beyond comes from the seeds planted in the podcast guesting. So I found John through podcast guesting. I found StoryBrand through podcast guesting. Obviously, the Nathan Barry example is directly about podcast guesting. That's why I'm so passionate about it. It's not only the leads and the sales that come from the podcast guesting appearances. That is foundational and important, and we provide an ROI guarantee because we know that is definitely going to work. But the part that becomes exponential in the growth here are the relationships that come as a result of doing that repeatedly. So in 90 days, we build a system based on this. And the last part of that 90 days is helping you find and land power partnerships from those efforts. So again, if you're aligned with this, and you're like, wow, this is something that makes a lot of sense. This is something I'd want to pursue. This is what I do. This is what we do at Seven Figure Leap. So if you're interested in that, you can just go to sevenfigureleap.com/call, and you'll be able to get on our calendar, and we can talk about you and your business and your goals, help you identify podcast guesting strategy and power partnership opportunities. And if it's a fit for you and you're a fit for the work that we do, we'll of course invite you, no pressure, no strings attached, but we would invite you then to our accelerator program. That's the way into the program. And then hopefully you can be a guest on my show and talk about your own power partnerships and how this has had a foundational impact on your business. So sevenfigureleap.com/call, super simple. And I would love to have a conversation with you and help you make this real and make this a really powerful strategy in your own business.